Republican Congressman Joe Wilson is urging the Biden administration to publicly condemn what he describes as a power grab. Wilson wrote a letter, which I have here in my hand, to Secretary of State Antony Blinken, saying, and I quote, "While the White House has expressed concern, unfortunately, the administration is yet to issue a clear statement condemning the actions of the President Saied. Refusing to act in Tunisia will lead to devastating consequences, which will not only destabilise Tunisia, but also could lead to further destabilisation of North Africa." Well, Representative Wilson joins me now from Washington. It's good to have you with us. While Joe Biden did give a muted response to what is happening in Tunisia, Secretary Blinken actually did use stronger words in a phone call with President Saied, saying that he urged him to take action that would return the country to a democratic path. In your letter, you went on to say, and I quote, "Tunisia's success has been a beacon of hope, exemplifying that democracy, rule of law and open markets are possible in the region." But, sir, actually it hasn't. The country's economy has been suffering for years. Many Tunisians live in poverty. It's often called a democratic beacon of hope. But you, as others have, must concede that this is more a mirage than a reality.
No. Hey, and you were there for the Arab Spring, 2011, and to see the inspiration of the people of Tunisia to promote democracy, and we know that it will take time, and then economic recovery. But I had the opportunity to be there 2 years ago. It was such an inspiration to me to see the wonderful people of Tunisia, to see the democratic processes of so many political parties, maybe too many. But the bottom line was people were involved. And so it's so disappointing. And this is bipartisan, Democrat and Republican, also bicameral, U.S. House, U.S. Senate. We are appalled at the coup d'etat on Sunday. We want the best for the people of Tunisia, and it's not through an authoritarian rule. And so they need to return to the presidency, the prime minister, the parliament. And sadly, Saied, the deterioration is even clearer now. He had indicated 30 days. Then he changed and said, well, multiple 30 days. We've heard that before from dictators. Additionally, the arrest of a parliamentarian, the arrest of news media, the closing of news media to deny the people of Tunisia to know what's going on. And so members of Congress are very concerned, and we look forward to working with Secretary Blinken, with President Biden. Right. And hey, things can be done. With the Millennial Challenge funding, this should be in question because it was intended to promote freedom and democracy, not an authoritarian rule. Additionally, there can be sanctions.
Well, I was just going to say, yeah, you gave Secretary Blinken until 5 p.m. Friday, August the 13th, to respond to your letter. You have seen his slightly more robust response than the president's to what is going on. What more is it specifically that you want to hear and see from Antony Blinken?
Well, I'd like to, again, to see the administration take a firm stand because we see democracy under threat. President Biden promised in his inaugural address to promote democracy around the world. And because we know that that's beneficial for the people of countries around the world. And then we know that it's beneficial to America and American families and reduces threats to American families. But hey, we want the best for the people of Tunisia, and it's not being done by an authoritarian rule. In fact, this is following the pattern of Venezuela, one of the wealthiest countries in the hemisphere, but with socialist policies, with authoritarian rule. Now there's shortages, obviously, of items. Millions of people had to flee the country, and that model should not be repeated in Tunisia.
The last time the US got involved in a Middle Eastern country's political inner workings like this was the very confused response by the Obama administration in the end of the Egyptian president Hosni Mubarak and then the overthrowing of his successor Mohamed Morsi. The aftermath was brutal, as was the aftermath of 2011 in Libya, when the US assisted in the, or got involved in the NATO coalition's activities there. Joe Biden has made it clear that he wishes to reduce the US footprint in the Middle East and wider region during his presidency. The US's legacy is tainted is it not, by its often chaotic involvement in this region?
Well, I would disagree. I have visited all the Persian Gulf states to see these countries of extraordinary development. My visit to Jordan, to Morocco, I've had wonderful to see personally, but to see the positive influence the United States has had, the liberation of Kuwait, the liberation of Iraq. We had the Prime Minister of Iraq in Washington yesterday. Totally unimaginable to go from a sadistic totalitarian of Saddam Hussein to the level of development today. Hey, it's not going to be perfect.
But hang on a minute, sir. Let me just stop you there for 1 second, because there are many criticisms and concerns about that the leak towards authoritarianism in Iraq again. Look, this is a show that's based in the Gulf. It's based in Abu Dhabi, in the UAE. We're just broadcasting from London today, so this show knows better than most what is going on in that region and what we are seeing around the Middle East, North Africa, and the Gulf, which I think is certainly a different situation. Following President Said's actions, there have been protests both in support and opposition to his actions. And his supporters say that actually the Western term for a democracy doesn't really work for them, and they are quite happy supporting a leader who they believe will provide them with a better standard of living, even if that means doing something unconstitutional to get there. Those are the supporters of the president's moves. Hang on. No, we know those supporters exist. I'm just putting this to you. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, hey, I think of Margaret Thatcher. She said socialism will work until you run out of spending other people's money. And back again to the Middle East, the Abraham Accords and Abu Dhabi and UAE, how incredible, Bahrain, Sudan. We've had a level of stability under the Trump administration, and I'd like to see that return to the benefit of all the people of the Middle East, and particularly, hey, think of the millions of people victimized in Syria, the millions who've had to flee to Turkey, to Jordan, and hey, the instability of Lebanon.
With respect, sir,
we need to address
I think when you're looking at the situation in Tunisia, and you're talking about, as many do, the sort of beacon of democracy, and then you talk about the Gulf states where there is nobody there in leadership suggesting that they are running democratic countries. I think there's a disconnect here. I guess my question is this. I mean, I've read your letter. I can see your appeal to the Biden administration. How involved do you want to see the US in the Middle East, North Africa, and wider region going forward? Are you an advocate of significant action by the US in that region?
Hey, put it historically, we've had a great interest in North Africa since the late 1700s. And then obviously during World War II to liberate North Africa from German-Italian occupation. And so this is not new, but even better. There should be hope for the people of Tunisia, and we want to provide that. And if it requires strong action of limiting of funding, of providing for sanctions against persons who are complicit in overturning a constitutional democracy, and then back to the Persian Gulf states. These are monarchies that are constitutional monarchies and in perpetual evolution in a very positive way. The leadership of all the countries that I visited, from Qatar to Kuwait, Bahrain, golly, these are really positive persons who are making a positive difference for the people of their country.
With that, we'll leave it there, sir. Thank you.